Jim Wolfe here, and welcome to another Book Nuggets episode of The Jim Wolfe Show. Today's book is Benjamin Franklin, An American Life by Walter Isaacson. And the first thing I want to say is that Benjamin Franklin is one of the three people I look up to most in my life right now. So I think it was really cool to read his biography. And I want to start off by recommending that you read biographies as well. I just started getting into this in the last couple of years, and I am addicted to learning, and then my second love is personal growth. And I used to read a lot of kind of how-to personal growth books, which is great. I'm actually writing one of those right now. I just finished a first draft about a month ago, so working on editing it. But those books definitely have a lot of value. But the really cool thing about biographies is that you get to see these people that achieved great things in their lives, and you get to see kind of behind the scenes of how all of that actually happened and how they developed into who we see them as now. Because a lot of times we just see people when they're at their peak. You know, we don't see all the valleys or how they got there, where they came from. And so we just kind of assume that these people are just kind of like magical and that they're kind of like born with a lot of things. And you know, some people were born with advantages, but all of these people who've achieved great things in their life had struggles and they dealt with different things. And it's really interesting to kind of go really deep in there and kind of get their beliefs and mindsets straight from them. And then kind of see what happened behind their scenes and what their life was really like. And I found that to be an incredible source of personal growth, just kind of like being with all the people that you admire. You can't always go hang out with all the people that you want to be like. You may not be able to afford it, or maybe they're dead like Benjamin Franklin, but you can read biographies of them, and I think that's the second best thing. And so I highly encourage everyone to read biographies of people they admire. It's a really, really good thing to do. At least it has been for me. So I wanted to start with that. And then Walter Isaacson has another biography as well about Steve Jobs, and I think he wrote one about Albert Einstein as well, and I'm sure I will get to those eventually. Now, there is so much content in this Ben Franklin book. I mean, I could probably do 100 or more episodes of Book Nuggets just on this book. It's literally packed with information and a lot of really good stories about Benjamin Franklin. And it's a really good book, so I highly recommend this one to anyone. And I think Benjamin Franklin was an amazing character, so it was really cool to kind of see the background story to his life. But what I want to focus on for today's video is two things that I found in this book that I think relate really closely to personal growth. And the first one has to do with the power of self-image and or identity. And identity is a really complex topic, so I'm going to focus mostly on self-image, but they're very related. So in the book, Walter Isaacson says that for the colonies to cross the threshold over into rebellion against England, they needed to conceive of themselves as a new nation. And so Isaacson was talking about the power of self-image. Now, it wasn't self-image at an individual level, it was more of kind of a group identity thing. So what he's saying is that for those 13 colonies to rebel against England, they had to kind of have this new concept of themselves as a nation. And that's something that they didn't have before. It'd be like someone from Nebraska right now saying, you know what, Nebraska is not part of the United States anymore, we're just a country of Nebraska. And it would take a certain number of people to believe that for that construct to be created in the world. And so we as humans, you know, in our groups, we co-create our reality all the time. So right now, most of us agree that the United States is a country. And so that's how we look at it. But really, it's kind of a co-creation of all of our collective minds and our structures and our, you know, our road system and all of that thing. But if you actually, like, looking at a map, it's obvious to see where the United States is because it's marked out. But if you just like started walking, it's pretty difficult to actually demarcate all the borders, especially between all the states. I mean, that's why they have state signs. It says, hey, you're in Indiana now. Well, that's because Indiana is basically made up. And so what Isaacson is saying is that for the colonies to rebel against England, we all in the colonies needed to perceive of ourselves as separate from England before we could actually cross that line and rebel. and to declare independence. And so how that relates to personal growth, I think self-image is one of the most powerful things in the personal growth world that works and actually can change people's lives. I know Tony Robbins talks about self-image a lot, and I think the originator of it was Maxwell Maltz, who wrote Psycho-Cybernetics, which is one of the top 5 personal growth books that I've read out of hundreds. And it's still one of the top 50 personal growth books in the world, even though it was written a long time ago. So Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz, definitely give that one a read if you haven't already. But self-image is huge. And again, Tony Robbins talks about this. Before you can achieve something, you have to kind of see yourself as at least somewhat possibly able to achieve it. It starts with kind of like your construct of yourself in your mind. Just like for the colonies, they had to have this conception of this new nation in order for them to declare their independence from England. So whatever it is that you're trying to do in your life, if you have a goal or something that you want to achieve or a problem you want to solve for the world or anything like that, it's going to have to start with at least some of this self-image stuff. So if you want to feed the hungry in your community, you have to see yourself as a person who can do that. That's kind of a really simple example, but I mean, if you want to win the Tour de France, you would have to see yourself as the kind of person that could win the Tour de France. You don't necessarily have to see yourself as the person who's going to win, but it has to be possible. It has to be part of your self-image for you to even put in the work to try to do something like that. And so it applied to the 13 colonies when we were in the process of declaring our independence from England. And it'll work for you in whatever your goal is. So if you have something that you want to achieve or some problem that you want to solve for the world, definitely start thinking about what kind of person would you have to be in order to do that thing, and start seeing yourself as that person more and more, and start taking actions in alignment with that kind of person, what that kind of person would do, and then you can go forward and achieve that thing or solve that problem. So I think that was really cool, that this concept of having this belief structure or this construction be the first thing that needed to happen before real action could take place has a really strong parallel with personal growth and your self-image transformation. And then the second thing that I thought was really interesting from this book that's super related to personal growth is a quote directly from Ben Franklin about happiness. And so Ben Franklin, and I'm going to read this to you, said, "Human felicity, happiness, is produced not so much by great pieces of good fortune that seldom happen, as by little advantages that occur every day." One more time. "Human felicity is produced not so much by great pieces of good fortune that seldom happen, as by little advantages that occur every day." And I think this is such an interesting quote because one of my favorite TED Talks of all time is by Dan Gilbert, and it's called The Surprising Science of Happiness. And in that TED Talk, he talks about how bad we are at predicting what's going to make us happy. And the example that he uses in the TED Talk is really great. He talks about how after 1 year, lottery winners and people who become disabled return to their normal levels of happiness. But we all think that the person who wins the lottery is obviously going to be happier. And what they found is that's just not true. We kind of have a basic level of happiness that we return to. There's a couple of things you can do to expand that, like practicing gratitude and striving towards your goals, and there's other things too. But we have a basic level of happiness, and winning the lottery doesn't really change that much over the long term. And so Benjamin Franklin, back in the day, old school Dan Gilbert, "Human felicity is produced not so much by the great pieces of good fortune that seldom happen, as by little advantages that occur every day." I'll see you later. Thanks for listening to The Jim Wolfe Show. For more content like this, subscribe to my YouTube channel or go to jamesdwolfe.com. That's jamesdwolfe.com.